The afternoon sun was beating down on the busy Metro City bus station when Lisa rolled her wheelchair up to the waiting area. She checked her watch, 3:45 p.m. Her physical therapy appointment was at 5 WU, and the bus usually took about 40 minutes to get there. She had learned to always arrive early because sometimes the wheelchair-accessible buses ran late, and missing therapy meant waiting another whole week for the next appointment. Lisa positioned herself near the platform where Route 23 would arrive. She pulled out her laptop and started working on a logo design for a small bakery downtown. At 34 years old, she had built a decent freelance graphic design business from her apartment. The work kept her mind sharp and gave her something to focus on, besides the constant challenges of navigating a world that wasn't always designed for people like her. 3 years ago, everything changed in one terrible moment. She was driving home from work on a rainy Thursday evening when another car ran a red light. The accident left her with a spinal injury that doctors said would keep her in a wheelchair for life. Those first months were the darkest time she could remember, but gradually, with support from family and friends, she learned to adapt. She figured out how to cook from her wheelchair, how to reach things on high shelves, and how to keep working at what she loved. The bus station was always crowded at this time of day. Office workers were heading home, students were going to evening classes, and elderly folks were returning from doctor appointments. Lisa had been coming here twice a week, for months now, and she recognized some of the regular faces. There was the lady with the bright red purse who always sat in the same spot, the teenager with headphones who never looked up from his phone, and the businessman who paced back and forth while talking loudly on conference calls. Today felt different, though. As Lisa worked on her laptop, she noticed 3 young men walking through the station. They looked like they were in their early 20s, maybe college students or guys who worked at one of the nearby restaurants. The tallest one seemed to be leading the group, talking loudly and gesturing with his hands. His 2 friends followed behind, laughing at whatever he was saying. At first, Lisa didn't pay much attention to them. People came and went all the time, at the station. But then she noticed they had stopped walking and were standing about 20 feet away from her. The tall one was pointing in her direction and saying something to his friends. She couldn't hear what they were talking about, but something about their body language made her uncomfortable. Lisa tried to focus on her work, but she could feel their eyes on her. She glanced up and saw them looking directly at her wheelchair. The tall one said something that made the other 2 laugh, and not in a friendly way. Lisa felt her stomach tighten. She had experienced this before, people staring, people making comments, people treating her like she was somehow less than human because she used a wheelchair. The 3 men started walking closer. Lisa saved her work and closed her laptop, suddenly feeling very aware of how exposed she was sitting there. The waiting area was open with no walls or barriers, and she was sitting alone while dozens of other passengers minded their own business around her. "Hey, look at that," the tall one said, now close enough that Lisa could hear him clearly. His voice had that cruel edge that bullies get when they think they found an easy target. Doesn't she know she's taking up too much space with that thing? Lisa felt her face get hot. She looked around hoping to catch the eye of a security guard or someone who might help, but the uniformed officer who usually stood near the information desk was nowhere to be seen. The other passengers seemed to be deliberately avoiding looking in her direction. "Maybe she doesn't know how to drive it properly," one of the other men said, and they all laughed again. Lisa gripped the sides of her wheelchair tighter. She had dealt with ignorant comments before, but usually when she was alone, people kept their thoughts to themselves. Having 3 of them together seemed to make them braver. Lisa decided the best thing to do was ignore them completely. She reopened her laptop and pretended to be absorbed in her work, hoping they would get bored and move on. But instead of leaving, they moved even closer. Now they were standing in a semicircle around her, close enough that she would have trouble moving her wheelchair without bumping into one of them. "Excuse me," Lisa said, keeping her voice as steady as she could. "You're standing very close to me. Could you please give me some space?" The tall one looked at his friends with mock surprise. "Oh, did you hear that? She wants some space. But she's already taking up space for 3 people with that big wheelchair." Lisa felt anger rising in her chest, but she also felt afraid. These 3 men were bigger than her, and she was sitting down while they were standing over her. If something happened, she wouldn't be able to get away quickly. Her wheelchair was fast on smooth surfaces, but the bus station floor was rough concrete with lots of obstacles. "I'm just waiting for my bus," Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm. "I'm not bothering anyone." "Well, you're bothering us," the second man said. "This is a public place. We can stand wherever we want." The third man, who had been quiet until now, pulled out his phone and pointed it at Lisa. "This is going to be hilarious," he said. "Wait until everyone sees this." Lisa's heart started beating faster. She knew that videos of people being humiliated sometimes went viral on social media. The thought of strangers all over the internet laughing at her made her feel sick. She looked around desperately for help, but the other passengers seemed to be pretending nothing was happening. An elderly couple sitting on a nearby bench looked concerned, but the man shook his head when his wife started to stand up. They were probably in their 70s and felt too vulnerable to confront three young men. Lisa couldn't blame them, but it still hurt to realize she was on her own. A businessman in an expensive suit was standing about 10 feet away, clearly listening to everything that was happening. He kept glancing over but then looking down at his phone whenever Lisa tried to make eye contact. A mother with two small children had been sitting nearby, but she quickly gathered her kids and moved to the other side of the waiting area. Lisa realized that this was how it always happened. People saw someone being picked on and they felt bad about it, but they also felt scared or uncomfortable or didn't want to get involved. Everyone assumed someone else would do something, so nobody did anything at all. The three men were getting bolder now that they realized no one was going to stop them. The tall one bent down so his face was closer to Lisa's eye level. "So what happened to you anyway? Were you always like this, or did you mess up somehow?" Lisa felt tears starting to form in her eyes, but she fought them back. She refused to give these bullies the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "That's none of your business," she said. "Oh, I think it is our business," the man with the phone said, still recording. "You're out here in public, so you made it our business." Lisa looked at her laptop bag hanging on the side of her wheelchair. Her phone was in the front pocket. If she could get to it, she could call security or the police. But the three men were standing so close that reaching for it would mean turning her back on them, and she didn't want to do that. The crowd around them continued to go about their business. Lisa could hear normal conversations happening just a few feet away. People talking about work, about dinner plans, about what movie they wanted to see this weekend. It felt surreal that life was continuing normally while she sat there feeling trapped and humiliated. The tall man straightened up and looked at his friends. "You know what I think? I think she's just looking for attention. Sitting right here where everyone can see her, working on her computer like she's so important." "Yeah," the second man agreed. "If I was like that, I would stay home where I belong. I wouldn't make everyone else uncomfortable by showing up in public places." Lisa felt something break inside her chest. The cruelty of their words was almost worse than being physically hurt. These men didn't see her as a person with feelings, with a job, with friends and family who loved her. They saw her as something less than human, something it was okay to torment for their entertainment. But Lisa had not survived the last 3 years by giving up easily. She had learned to be strong, to advocate for herself, to demand the respect she deserved. She took a deep breath and looked directly at the tall man. "I have every right to be here," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'm a human being, and I deserve to be treated with basic respect. What you're doing is harassment, and it's wrong." The three men looked surprised by her directness. For a moment, Lisa thought they might actually back down. But then the tall one's expression hardened. "Don't lecture us about rights," he said. "Nobody wants to see you rolling around here acting like you own the place." That's when Lisa realized this situation was not going to end well unless someone intervened. These men were not going to stop on their own, and the other passengers were not going to help her. She was going to have to find a way to protect herself, and she was running out of options fast. The situation was getting worse by the minute. Lisa could feel her heart pounding as the three men moved even closer to her wheelchair. What had started as rude comments was now turning into something much more serious. The tall man seemed to be enjoying the power he had over her, and his two friends were feeding off his energy. "You know what your problem is?" the tall man said, leaning down again so his face was uncomfortably close to hers. You think you deserve special treatment just because you're in that chair. But the truth is, nobody wants to deal with people like you. Lisa tried to back her wheelchair away, but there was a concrete pillar directly behind her. She was trapped between the pillar and the three men, with no easy way to escape. The waiting area that had felt safe and familiar just minutes ago now felt like a prison. The man with the phone was still recording everything. He held it up high to get a better angle, making sure to capture Lisa's face as she struggled to stay calm. This is perfect, he said to his friends. Wait until everyone sees this. A grown woman sitting in a wheelchair getting all upset because we're standing near her. I'm not upset because you're standing near me, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm upset because you're being cruel for no reason. I haven't done anything to you. The second man, who had been mostly quiet until now, laughed. You haven't done anything? Just by being here, you're making everyone uncomfortable. People don't want to see that when they're trying to go about their day. Lisa looked around desperately, hoping someone would finally step in to help. The elderly couple was still sitting on their bench, but now they were looking down at their hands, clearly too frightened to get involved. The businessman with the expensive suit had moved even farther away, though she could tell he was still listening to what was happening. A group of teenagers had gathered near the vending machines, and Lisa could see them watching the situation. For a moment, she felt hopeful that someone younger might have the courage to speak up, but instead she heard one of them whisper to another, "Should we do something?" And the response was, "It's not our problem. Just stay out of it." The mother, with the two small children, was now completely across the waiting area, but Lisa could see her looking back with a worried expression. She was probably torn between wanting to help and needing to protect her own kids. Lisa understood that completely, but it still added to her feeling of being completely alone. The tall man straightened up and looked at his friends with a grin. You know what we should do? We should see if she can actually move that thing properly. Maybe she needs some help learning how to drive it. Before Lisa could react, he reached out and grabbed one of the handles on the back of her wheelchair. The sudden movement made her feel completely helpless and violated. No one had the right to touch her wheelchair without permission. It was like someone grabbing and moving the chair you were sitting in, except worse because her wheelchair was essentially part of her body. Don't touch my chair, Lisa said, her voice getting louder. You have no right to put your hands on my wheelchair. Oh, so now it's yours? The tall man said, still holding onto the handle. I thought this was a public place where everyone has equal rights. Isn't that what you just said? The man with the phone moved around to get a better angle of Lisa's face. Look how angry she's getting, he said. This is hilarious. She acts tough, but she can't even stand up for herself. Lisa felt a surge of anger at that comment. These men had no idea what it took for her to get through each day. What challenges she faced, what strength it required just to leave her apartment and navigate the world. The idea that she couldn't stand up for herself was completely wrong, but they were too ignorant to understand that. I am standing up for myself, Lisa said, her voice firm despite her fear. I'm telling you that what you're doing is wrong, and I want you to stop. That takes courage, not weakness. The second man rolled his eyes. Oh, please, spare us the inspirational speech. Nobody wants to hear about how brave you are. Lisa reached for her phone in her laptop bag, but the tall man was still holding her wheelchair handle, and every time she tried to turn to reach the bag, he would move the chair slightly in the opposite direction. It was a cruel game that made it impossible for her to get to her phone. Looking for this? He asked, noticing her struggle. Maybe if you ask nicely, we'll let you make your phone call. Lisa realized she was dealing with people who genuinely enjoyed causing pain to others. This wasn't just thoughtless behavior or ignorance about disability. These three men were deliberately trying to humiliate her, and they were taking pleasure in her distress. The bus station continued to bustle around them. Lisa could hear announcements over the loudspeaker about arriving and departing buses. She could smell food from the nearby snack bar and hear the normal sounds of people talking, walking, and living their lives. But in her small corner of the waiting area, she felt completely cut off from that normal world. Here's what I don't understand, the man with the phone said, still recording. If you can't walk, why don't you just stay home? Why make everyone else deal with having to see you and work around you? It would be easier for everyone. The cruelty of that statement hit Lisa like a physical blow. The idea that she should hide herself away from the world just because she used a wheelchair was exactly the kind of thinking that kept people with disabilities from living full lives. She thought about all the times she had heard similar comments, all the times people had made her feel like she was a burden just for existing in public spaces. "I have a right to be here," Lisa said, her voice shaking with emotion now. "I have a job. I have appointments. I have a life. I'm not going to hide in my apartment just because some people are too small-minded to treat me like a human being." The tall man let go of her wheelchair handle suddenly, causing it to jerk forward slightly. Small-minded? Listen to her, guys. She thinks she's better than us because she's got a sob story. Lisa's hands were shaking now as she tried once more to reach for her phone. This time she managed to get her fingers on the zipper of her laptop bag, but the man who had been recording stepped closer and knocked her hand away. "I don't think so," he said. "We're not done talking to you yet." Lisa looked around the waiting area one more time, silently pleading with anyone to help her. A security guard had to be somewhere in the building. There had to be someone who would step in and stop this from getting worse. But everyone seemed determined to mind their own business. The elderly couple had actually gotten up and moved to a different area entirely. The businessman was now facing completely away from the situation, talking loudly on his phone as if he couldn't hear what was happening just a few feet behind him. The teenagers by the vending machines had taken out their own phones, but instead of calling for help, Lisa realized with horror that they were also recording the situation. This was becoming entertainment for them, something to share with their friends later. "Please," Lisa said, hating how desperate her voice sounded. "I just want to wait for my bus in peace. I'm not bothering anyone. Can't you just leave me alone?" The three men exchanged looks, and for a moment Lisa thought her plea might have gotten through to them. But then the tall man smiled in a way that made her stomach drop. "You know what? You're right. You're not bothering anyone because nobody cares about you. Look around. All these people, and not one of them thinks you're worth helping." Those words hurt worse than anything else they had said. Because looking around the crowded bus station, Lisa had to admit there was some truth to it. Dozens of people could see what was happening, and not one of them was willing to get involved. The man with the phone stepped even closer, holding it just inches from Lisa's face. "Say something for the camera," he said. "Tell everyone how it feels to be completely helpless." Lisa turned her face away from the phone, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped physically by her position between the pillar and the three men, and she was trapped emotionally by the cruelty of the situation and the indifference of everyone around her. She thought about her physical therapist, who would be expecting her in an hour. She thought about the logo design she had been working on, and how proud she had felt of the creative solution she had come up with. She thought about her apartment where she felt safe and in control of her environment. But mostly, she thought about how unfair it was that she had to deal with this kind of treatment just for trying to live her life. She had worked so hard to build independence after her accident. She had learned to drive again, to work again, to go out in public and handle whatever challenges came up. Yet here she was, feeling more helpless than she had felt since those first dark days in the hospital. Not because of her disability, but because of the cruelty of people who saw her disability as an excuse to treat her as less than human. The situation was spiraling completely out of control, and Lisa was running out of options. She needed help, and she needed it soon. Just when Lisa thought the situation couldn't get any worse, she heard the sound of confident footsteps approaching from behind the three men. The steps were different from the casual shuffling of other passengers. They had a steady, purposeful rhythm that seemed to cut through all the noise of the busy bus station. "Excuse me, gentlemen," came a clear, strong voice. "I need you to step away from this lady right now." All three men turned around, and Lisa craned her neck to see who was speaking. Standing about 10 feet away was a woman in a crisp military dress uniform. She looked to be in her late 20s, with her hair pulled back neatly and posture that spoke of years of training and discipline. Her uniform was decorated with ribbons and badges that showed she had served overseas. Lisa felt a surge of hope for the first time since this whole ordeal began. Someone had finally stepped in to help her. But she also felt worried because she could see the anger in the tall man's face as he sized up this new person who dared to challenge him. "Mind your own business, lady," the tall man said, trying to sound tough. "This doesn't concern you." The soldier took 2 steps closer and Lisa could see her nameplate read Williams. She didn't look scared or intimidated at all. Instead, she looked like someone who had dealt with difficult situations before and knew exactly how to handle them. "Actually, it does concern me," Sergeant Williams said calmly. "When I see 3 grown men harassing someone who's just trying to go about her day, that becomes my business. That becomes everyone's business." The man with the phone was still recording, but now he seemed unsure whether to point the camera at Lisa or at this new person who had entered the scene. The third man, who had been quiet for most of the harassment, looked like he wanted to be anywhere else but here. "Look, we're just having a conversation," the tall man said, but his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "There's no law against talking to people in public." Sergeant Williams looked directly at him with the kind of steady gaze that Lisa imagined could make enemy soldiers think twice about their choices. "There are actually several laws against what you're doing," she said. "Harassment, intimidation, and blocking someone's movement are all crimes. And I've been watching long enough to see that you've done all 3. Lisa felt amazed by how quickly the dynamic had changed. Just moments ago, she had felt completely powerless and alone. Now she had someone standing up for her who clearly wasn't going to be pushed around or intimidated. The second man stepped forward, trying to look tough. "You can't tell us what to do. You're not even a real cop. You're just some woman playing dress-up in a costume." Sergeant Williams didn't even blink at the insult. "You're right, I'm not a police officer. I'm a United States Army medic who has served 3 tours overseas. I've seen real courage and real cowardice, and I know the difference. What you're doing right now? This is cowardice." Lisa watched as the man with the phone lowered his device slightly. She could see doubt creeping into his expression. The confident bullying attitude they had shown when they were picking on her was starting to crack now that they faced someone who wouldn't back down. "We weren't doing anything wrong," the tall man said, but he was already taking a small step backward. "She's being too sensitive. People like her need to learn to take a joke." "People like her?" Sergeant Williams repeated, her voice getting colder. "You mean people who have faced real challenges and overcome them? People who have shown more strength in one day than you've probably shown in your entire life?" Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of fear or humiliation. They were tears of gratitude. Someone finally understood what she went through. Someone finally saw her as a person worthy of respect and protection. The bus station around them had changed completely. Where before people had been looking away and pretending not to notice, now passengers were stopping to watch. Lisa could see several people pulling out their phones, but instead of recording for entertainment, they looked like they were ready to call for help if needed. The elderly couple who had moved away earlier was now standing at a safe distance but clearly supporting Sergeant Williams. The businessman who had been ignoring everything was now facing their direction, no longer pretending he couldn't see what was happening. "Here's what's going to happen," Sergeant Williams said, her voice calm but absolutely firm. "You 3 are going to apologize to this lady for your behavior. Then you're going to leave this area and not come back. And if I see you bothering anyone else, I will personally make sure the police know exactly who you are and what you've been doing." The tall man looked at his 2 friends as if hoping they would back him up, but Lisa could see that their confidence was completely gone. Being confronted by someone with real authority and real courage had shown them exactly what they were, just bullies who only felt brave when picking on someone they thought couldn't fight back. "We don't have to apologize for anything," the tall man said, but his voice was shaking now. "We have rights too, you know." "You absolutely have rights," Sergeant Williams agreed. "You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to leave peacefully. But you don't have the right to harass other people, and you definitely don't have the right to make someone feel unsafe in a public place." Lisa watched as the soldier slowly moved closer to her wheelchair, positioning herself between Lisa and the 3 men. It was a protective gesture that made Lisa feel safer than she had felt in the past hour. "Ma'am," Sergeant Williams said, addressing Lisa directly for the first time, Are you hurt? Do you need medical attention? Lisa shook her head, overwhelmed by the kindness in the soldier's voice. No, I'm okay. Thank you so much for stepping in. I didn't know what I was going to do. You don't need to thank me, Sergeant. Williams said. This is what decent people do for each other. Nobody should have to deal with this kind of treatment. The man with the phone finally lowered his device completely. Look, maybe we got a little carried away, he said. We were just having some fun. It's not like we hurt anyone. Sergeant Williams turned to look at him with an expression that could have frozen fire. Not like you hurt anyone? Do you think pain only counts if it's physical? Do you think humiliation and fear don't hurt? Do you think making someone feel less than human doesn't cause real damage? Lisa was amazed by how clearly the soldier understood what the harassment had done to her. Most people who hadn't experienced it themselves didn't realize how deeply this kind of treatment could hurt. We're sorry, okay? The third man said suddenly. He looked genuinely ashamed, unlike his two friends who still seemed more angry than sorry. We didn't mean for it to go this far. Sergeant Williams looked at him for a long moment. That's a start, she said. But you need to understand that not meaning for it to go this far isn't an excuse. You made a choice to treat another human being with cruelty. Every word you said, every action you took, was a choice. Lisa could see other passengers nodding, in agreement. A woman with a briefcase stepped forward and said, I saw everything that happened. I have your faces recorded on my phone if this lady wants to press charges. The businessman who had been ignoring the situation earlier also spoke up. I recorded some of it too. What you did was completely unacceptable. Suddenly, the three men found themselves surrounded not by supporters, but by witnesses who were ready to hold them accountable for their actions. The power dynamic had completely reversed from what it had been just minutes earlier. This is ridiculous, the tall man said, but his voice was weak now. Everyone's overreacting. It was just a joke. Jokes are supposed to be funny for everyone involved, Sergeant Williams said. When only one person is laughing and everyone else is hurting or uncomfortable, that's not a joke. That's bullying. Lisa watched as the three men finally seemed to realize that they weren't going to be able to talk their way out of this situation. They had lost the support of the crowd. They were facing someone who wasn't intimidated by them, and they were starting to understand that their actions might have real consequences. Fine, the tall man said. We'll leave. But this is stupid. Everyone's being way too sensitive. Before you go, Sergeant Williams said, you owe this lady a real apology, not because you got caught, but because what you did was wrong. The three men looked at each other, clearly not wanting to apologize, but also wanting to get out of this situation as quickly as possible. Lisa could see the internal struggle on their faces as they realized they were trapped between their pride and their desire to escape. The tension in the air was thick as everyone waited to see what would happen next. Lisa held her breath, wondering if they would actually apologize or if they would just try to walk away. Either way, she felt protected now in a way she hadn't felt since this whole ordeal began. Sergeant Williams stood calmly, waiting. Her presence alone had changed everything, but Lisa could see that she wasn't going to let these men off easy. They were going to have to face what they had done. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. Everyone in the immediate area was watching, waiting to see if the three men would actually apologize or just try to walk away. Lisa could feel her heart still beating fast, but for the first time since this whole thing started, she felt like she had some control back. The tall man looked around at all the faces staring at him. The crowd had grown larger as more passengers stopped to see what was happening. Instead of the anonymous bystanders who had ignored Lisa's situation earlier, these people were now actively involved, clearly supporting her and Sergeant Williams. Sorry, the third man said suddenly, looking directly at Lisa. His voice was quiet and he seemed genuinely ashamed. What we did was wrong. I'm really sorry we treated you that way. Lisa could see that this apology was different from the half-hearted sorry he had mumbled earlier. This one seemed to come from someone who actually understood that he had hurt another person. Thank you, Lisa said simply. She wasn't ready to forgive everything that had happened, but at least one of them seemed to recognize that their behavior had been cruel. The man with the phone looked uncomfortable, shifting from foot to foot. "Yeah, I'm sorry too," he said, though his apology sounded more like something he felt forced to say rather than something he meant. All eyes turned to the tall man, who had been the ringleader of the harassment. He stood there looking angry and embarrassed, clearly not wanting to apologize but also realizing he had no way out of the situation. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "Fine, sorry or whatever. Can we go now?" Sergeant Williams shook her head. "That's not an apology. That's just words you're saying because you want to leave. A real apology means you understand what you did wrong and why it was hurtful." The tall man's face got red with anger and embarrassment. Lisa could see that he was someone who wasn't used to being called out for his behavior, someone who probably got away with being cruel because most people were too scared or polite to confront him. "Look, lady," he said to Sergeant Williams, "I don't know who you think you are, but you can't make me say anything I don't want to say." "You're absolutely right," Sergeant Williams replied calmly. "I can't make you apologize, but everyone here can see exactly what kind of person you are. Everyone here can see that when given the chance to do the right thing, you choose to double down on being cruel instead." Lisa watched as several people in the crowd pulled out their phones. The businessman who had recorded earlier stepped forward. "I've got clear video of everything that happened," he said, "including your face and your refusal to take responsibility for your actions." The woman with the briefcase nodded. "Me too. This kind of behavior shouldn't be tolerated anywhere." Lisa realized that the tables had completely turned. Earlier, the man with the phone had been recording her humiliation for entertainment. Now, multiple people were recording his refusal to take responsibility for his cruelty. The video that was going to be shared wouldn't be making fun of someone with a disability. It would be showing the world what a bully looked like when he was finally held accountable. Just then, Lisa heard the sound she had been hoping for all along. Heavy footsteps and the crackle of a radio. 2 security guards were approaching, drawn by the crowd that had gathered. "What's going on here?" the first security guard asked. He was an older man with gray hair who looked like he had been working at the bus station for years. "These 3 men were harassing this lady," Sergeant Williams explained, gesturing toward Lisa. "Multiple witnesses saw the entire incident and several people have video evidence of what happened." The security guard looked at Lisa with concern. "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need medical attention?" "I'm okay physically," Lisa said, "but they were very cruel to me. They made fun of my wheelchair, they blocked me from leaving, and they recorded me without permission while they were humiliating me." The second security guard, a younger woman, was already taking notes. "We'll need to get statements from everyone involved," she said, "and we'll need to see any video evidence you have." The tall man finally seemed to realize that this situation had become much more serious than he had expected. "Come on, this is getting way out of hand," he said. "We were just joking around. Nobody got hurt." "Nobody got hurt?" Lisa repeated, finding her voice stronger than it had been all day. "You made me feel like I was less than human. You made me afraid to be in public. You tried to humiliate me in front of strangers. That's not nobody getting hurt. That's causing real pain to another person." Several people in the crowd murmured their agreement. Lisa could see nods and expressions of support from passengers who had witnessed what happened. The older security guard looked stern as he addressed the 3 men. "Harassment is a serious offense. Making someone feel unsafe in a public place is against the law. And if you recorded someone without their permission for the purpose of humiliation, that could be considered a form of assault." Lisa watched as the reality of their situation finally sank in for all 3 men. What had started as cruel fun for them was now potentially going to have real consequences. "We'll delete the video," the man with the phone said quickly. "Look, I'll delete it right now." He pulled out his phone and started tapping the screen. "That's not enough," the female security guard said. "We need to verify that it's been completely deleted, and we need to file a report about this incident." Sergeant Williams stepped closer to Lisa's wheelchair. "Would you like to press charges?" she asked quietly. "You have every right to do that. After what they put you through." Lisa thought about it for a moment. Part of her wanted these men to face serious consequences for their cruelty, but another part of her just wanted this whole ordeal to be over so she could try to move on with her day. I want them to understand that what they did was wrong, Lisa said. I want them to know that people with disabilities deserve to be treated with respect. If they can learn from this, then maybe something good can come out of a terrible situation. The third man, who had given the most sincere apology, stepped forward. I really do understand that what we did was wrong, he said. I've never treated anyone like that before, and I'm ashamed that I went along with it today. I promise you it will never happen again. Lisa looked at him carefully, trying to judge whether his remorse was genuine. She could see tears in his eyes, and his voice was shaking. I believe you, she said finally. But believing you doesn't mean there shouldn't be consequences for your actions. The older security guard nodded approvingly. Smart thinking, ma'am. Actions have consequences, whether someone is sorry or not. The tall man was looking increasingly panicked as he realized that his refusal to apologize had only made things worse for him. Look, maybe I was wrong too, he said quickly. Maybe I should have been nicer. Maybe? Sergeant Williams raised an eyebrow. You think maybe you should have been nicer to a woman who was just sitting here waiting for her bus? You think maybe you shouldn't have humiliated someone for having a disability? Lisa could see that Sergeant Williams wasn't going to let him off easy, just because he was finally admitting he might have been wrong. His apology was too little, too late, and everyone could see that it was only happening because he was facing consequences. The bus station has a zero-tolerance policy for harassment, the female security guard explained. At minimum, you three are banned from this facility for 30 days. Depending on what the victim decides and what our investigation shows, there could be additional consequences. Lisa felt a sense of justice at hearing that. These men wouldn't be able to come back here and potentially harass other people at least not for a while. 30 days? The man with the phone protested. How are we supposed to get to work? This is the main bus station downtown. You should have thought about that before you decided to harass someone, Sergeant Williams said, firmly. Actions have consequences. Now you get to experience what it feels like when your ability to move freely in public is restricted. Lisa hadn't thought about it that way, but the soldier was right. These men were going to get a small taste of what it felt like to have your access to public spaces limited, though their limitation was due to their own poor choices rather than a physical disability. The crowd began to slowly disperse as the security guards took information from the key witnesses. Several people approached Lisa before they left to express their support and apologize for not stepping in sooner. The elderly couple came over, with the woman gently touching Lisa's hand. I'm so sorry we didn't help you earlier, she said. We were scared, but that's no excuse. You handled yourself with such dignity. The businessman who had recorded everything handed his contact information to the security guards. I should have spoken up immediately, he told Lisa. I'm glad that soldier had the courage to do what the rest of us should have done. Even some of the teenagers who had been watching came over to apologize. We should have said something, one of them said. We were just shocked by how mean they were being. Next time we'll speak up right away. As the crowd dispersed and the security guards finished their initial reports, Lisa found herself alone with Sergeant Williams. The three men had been escorted to the security office to complete the incident reports and receive their official ban notices. Thank you, Lisa said, looking up at the soldier who had changed everything. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't stepped in. You don't need to thank me, Sergeant Williams replied. What I did today was just basic human decency. I'm just sorry it took so long for someone to help you. Lisa nodded, still processing everything that had happened. Can I ask you something? What made you decide to step in when everyone else was just watching? Sergeant Williams thought for a moment. In the military, we have a saying, leave no one behind. That doesn't just apply to combat situations. It applies to life. When you see someone who needs help, you help them. It's that simple. Lisa felt tears forming in her eyes again, but these were tears of gratitude and hope. I wish more people thought like that. Maybe they will now, Sergeant Williams said. Sometimes it just takes one person to show others what courage looks like. I saw several people recording what happened, today, but this time they were recording bullies being held accountable instead of someone being humiliated. Maybe that video will inspire other people to speak up when they see something wrong happening. As if on cue, Lisa heard the announcement for her bus. Route 23 was pulling into the station. After everything that had happened, she had almost forgotten that she still had a physical therapy appointment to get to. "That's my bus," Lisa said, gathering her laptop bag. "Do you feel safe riding it?" Sergeant Williams asked. "I could wait with you to make sure everything's okay." Lisa considered the offer, but she realized that she did feel safe now. The 3 men were banned from the bus station. The other passengers had shown their support for her, and she had been reminded that there were good people in the world who would stand up for what was right. "I think I'll be okay," Lisa said. "But thank you for everything you've done today. You've restored my faith in people." As Lisa rolled her wheelchair toward the bus, she felt different than she had when she arrived at the station. She felt stronger, more confident, and more hopeful about the world around her. She had experienced the worst of humanity today, but she had also experienced the best of it. And sometimes that makes all the difference.